back. We've got another quick update for you about what's going on in the Middle East here in Israel, on the border with Syria and inside Syria, regarding the Syrian genocide against the Druze people. And it is, by all accounts, an attempted genocide and an attempted cleansing in the Druze town of Sueda, which is home to the largest number of Druze in Syria, which is home to the largest number of Druze in the world. There's something, I think, like 700,000 or a million Druze in Syria, roughly. And Sueda has hundreds of thousands of them. It's a significant town. If the jihadi terrorists and the Bedouin allies that are supporting them get full access to all of Sueda and are not impeded by Israeli forces, we could easily be talking about tens of thousands, if not hundreds of thousands of dead Druze very quickly in Sueda. Now, fortunately, Sueda is mountainous, which makes it harder for forces to get up the hill, of course, but the lines have been broken and jihadis have gotten into the town. They pulled back a number of times, but each time they come back again. There have been ceasefires practically every 12 hours that just the jihadis keep violating, or their Bedouin allies keep violating. The Bedouins who are helping them are Bedouins from the south of Syria, in that area between Israel and Sueda. It's a good 60 kilometers or so, really, between the town of Hadar and Sueda, which is a Druze town next to the border of Israel and the Golan, right across the way from, it's like a 10-minute, 15-minute drive away from Majd al-Shams, which is on the Israeli side. There have been a lot of Israeli Druze who've gone into Syria to try to help their relatives, in many cases immediate family, if not, cousins or extended family, that are just, living across the fence because of political situations, history and fences and all that. A lot of them went in to literally bring them money and food and medical supplies and whatever they could bring them. Others went in there to give them kind of moral support. For the most part, they went to villages that were close to the Israeli border. Those villages are basically under the protection of the IDF, because the IDF has taken up positions in a bunch of those towns. The reason that they've done that is to keep the Syrian jihadis away from those border towns, because they don't want jihadis on the border of Israel. But that's not the reason that Syria is fighting against the Druze. The reason the Syrians are fighting against the Druze, as I've told you many times in these videos, is about a year ago in April, a number of, was it even a year ago? No, sorry. A few months ago in April, and so many things happening. It was this year, because a year ago Assad was still in power. This year in April, religious pilgrimage. And because of that, al-Julani, now known as Mr. al-Shara, the terrorist in a suit, decided that he would, oh, hello there, I see you, Milan. The terrorist in a suit decided that he would send forces to try to kill Druze. And the way that he did it is kind of sneaky. So there was I've mentioned this before, but I'll tell you for those of you who don't remember or don't know. There was a convoy of regular goods going to Sueda, trucks bringing goods from Damascus and wherever. Food, medicine, regular supplies that any town needs on a regular basis, going to Sueda. being driven by Druze. And the Bedouins, who, by the way, Israel recently helped and literally built a hospital for them, um, because Israel likes to give people life, and so built the hospital for them when they were themselves under attack by al-Shara's terrorist forces. And they said, no, we don't want to fight you. Let's be friends. So al-Shara's jihadis said, okay, we won't kill you for now. Meanwhile, Israel built them a hospital in Syria, right? And the Bedouin and the Druze have long had kind of tensions between them going back centuries and centuries, right? And different Druze towns have different political, majorities, if you will, and they side with different kind of political things. But generally speaking, as a nation, the Druze in any given country are usually patriotic to that country. But in the current context of the last government being overthrown or ran away, and the new government being very jihadi and very anti-ethnic minority, the Druze didn't know really what they should be doing. So they just tried to stay to themselves, stay out of problems, and, not get attacked. And Mr. al-Shara promised, we want to unify the country and not attack all the minorities. He then proceeded to attack all the minorities, starting with the Alawites and the Christians, and then the Kurds, and then Alawites and Christians and Druze again, and then now in this latest round of fighting, Druze and Alawites and Christians. It's horrible. So anyway, roll forward, and about a week ago, like I said, the cargo convoy was coming to Sweda. Hello, Jim. That cargo convoy was on its way to Sweda, and some Bedouin terrorists, for lack of a better word, hijacked some of the convoy trucks with their goods in them, and more importantly, took hostage some of the drivers and people that were assisting the drivers with the loads, right? Load and unload crew. And so they took some hostages, and the Druze, because those drivers and crew were Druze people from Sweda, the Druze were expecting their goods, didn't get the goods, understood the situation, got the message from the Bedouins, hey, we've got your guys hostages. And so the Druze don't take kindly to that. And they essentially fell for the bait, in a sense, by taking some Bedouin hostage in return. So then the Bedouins agreed to exchange the hostages with the Druze, and they did. The Syrian so-called government, meanwhile, used that whole exchange as an excuse to blame the Druze for the attack, which they were first attacked, but blamed the Druze. Sound familiar? So they blamed the Druze for attacking the Bedouin, even though it was the Bedouin who attacked them first. And the Druze were just reacting to that attack. So Julani, or al-Shara, the terrorist in a suit, sent his jihadis and his Bedouin, proxies to go and attack the Druze. Meanwhile, the butchering started happening because they went and slaughtered villagers that are at the base of the mountain of Sweda. I explained a lot of this in a previous video. If you haven't watched it, feel free to go watch. Hi, Lydia. And that drew out more people from the town of Sweda itself to come down the mountain to try to protect their fellow Druze. More slaughter happened. More humiliations of Druze. Also Christians and Alawites, by the way, who also live in the area. I think there was a Christian father, like a priest, or something like that, who was, right, I think he's a priest, was killed yesterday after pleading for help. Meanwhile, the Israelis, under a lot of pressure from not just the Druze, but Israelis at large felt the obligation to do something. So the prime minister said, hey, back off the Druze or we will have no choice but to attack you. The jihadis didn't listen. The Bedouin didn't listen. So Israel sent in some more planes to drop some ordnance on the heads of the jihadis and the Bedouin, who then immediately scattered because that's what they do. They're not professional fighters. They're not professional soldiers. They're just bloodlust, craven psychopaths driven by hatred and other perversions. For example, at that point, once the Israelis started dropping bombs on Syria and confirmed that there were commandos in Syria, al-Shara fled Syria and he went to Turkey over the border, where his best friend and buddy Erdogan is giving him sanctuary, letting him regroup while he continues sending his proxies to slaughter Druze and pretending and promising to the U.S. that, oh yeah, no, we're definitely calling a ceasefire. And he calls for a ceasefire. Ceasefire gets violated by his own people within 12 hours. That's happened now so often, it's more than a bit of a joke. Unfortunately, it's not a funny one because it's bloody and has deadly consequences. In addition to that, the jihadis, in the meantime, were promised by al-Shara's brother, who took to the mic while al-Shara was, went to Turkey. And he said he was calling on all Muslims. He was giving them a fatwa, which is like a religious edict, kind of like almost like an order, but like an edict, an approval, right? Saying, you have the rights to go and kill Druze in our country. And he's calling on all Muslims from around the world who want to go and kill Druze and Christians and Alawites, but specifically Druze, to go slaughter them, not to film it, because there's too many videos and stuff like that making them look bad, but to do it as much as possible. And in addition to that, he promised them that they could take women and girls to be sex slaves. And there are videos of women and their daughters being driven away, like inside the car cam, dash cam, whatever you call it, indoor of the car cam, where you can see two jihadis driving their pickup truck or whatever with a number of Druze women clearly scared for their lives and their daughters' lives, hugging each other and, yelling at the men in front of them for doing the awful things they're probably about to do and that they've obviously already done. There are at least anywhere from 700 to 1,000 people that are known to be like dead and accounted for that are Druze and Christians and Alawites in Sueda and surrounding villages. But there are many, many more that have not yet been accounted for because they are in homes, they are in churches, they are in the Druze equivalent of a church, they are in the hospital, they're in the streets in many cases. And in some neighborhoods, there's not enough. There's not a lot of men left because some of the neighborhoods have been, whole blocks have been wiped out. So they're having a hard time getting rid of dealing with the corpses, picking them up, and putting them where they need to be. It's an absolute. How old am I, Ron John? I don't really see how it's relevant, but hello to you. So there's a lot of horrible things happening right now, not far from here, to Druze who are very close to us here in Israel. The Druze in Israel are, they're our brothers and sisters, 100%. They serve in our army. They're in our government. They're doctors, lawyers, engineers, you name it. They're fighter pilots, tank commanders, special elite commando units, infantrymen, logistics personnel, reserve officers, you name it. They have, among the populations in Israel, they have the highest number, percentage-wise, of people that go into combat units. They're very small populations, about 140,000 Druze in Israel. Um, but a lot of them, you know, sign up for the army and sign up for combat units in particular of one kind or another, with Air Force, Army, Navy, whatever it is. They're fiercely loyal, amazing, brave warriors, but they're very peaceful people. They do not seek war. Um, they're very much for peace, actually, and it is horrifying to them to see what's happening in Gaza. It's horrifying to them to see what's happening, you know, anywhere there's violence. They are just as horrified as anyone else who's a decent person, you know, who wishes there were no violence in war. And now the violence has befallen them once again, and they are suffering the wrath of an insane jihadi extremist terrorist government, which is currently in control of Syria, which is lying through its teeth, telling the Trump administration and the Israeli administration, yeah, we want a ceasefire, and then immediately violating it. Israel, for its part, has not done more to stop the attacks, in that they haven't sent in ground forces, because Sweden is a good 60 kilometers away through quite a lot of significant enemy territory. That doesn't mean they couldn't do it, but Israel's forces are fighting in Gaza and are guarding the northern border of Lebanon and are, you know, making sure that terrorists don't do bad things in Judea and Samaria, and are making sure that ballistic missiles being shot at us from Yemen don't reach Israel, and that anything happening in Iran is, you know, not going to become a bigger problem. So there's already 7 fronts, you know, plus, you know, Syria was already a front because they were shooting rockets over the border during the last 2 years, but now it's a much more active front, obviously. So to send in ground troops is not necessarily so easy, and even to use helicopters or airplanes, which sounds easy, isn't necessarily easy when, let's say, the US is pressuring Israel not to do that for whatever reason, which is inexplicable. Yes, Trump has sent out messages saying that the violence has to stop, but he hasn't mentioned the Druze by name. He said all parties must stop and put down their weapons. What is this equivalence crap? It's not, there is no equivalence here. There is no equivalence. The jihadis attacked the Druze. They used the Bedouins to start it, but the jihadis are the ones doing this. If it was just the Druze by themselves, they wouldn't have attacked the Druze. If it was just the Bedouins, you know, they wouldn't have attacked the Druze for no reason. Yes, there's tensions between the Druze and the Bedouins going back centuries. But at this particular point in time, there was no reason for the Bedouins to start such a deadly blood feud between the Druze and the Bedouin, along with the jihadis. But we're seeing it. We're seeing it happen right now before our very eyes. It's literally a genocide. Like, people who have been, you know, out of the streets saying genocide about what's happening in Gaza without actually demonstrating any intention on the part of Israel, let alone actions that actually would say, yeah, this is a genocide. Because if you think about it, okay, if 70% of the buildings in Gaza have been destroyed, why aren't 70% of the people in Gaza dead? It's because Israel tells them to get out of the way. Hey, bud, I'm the guy who made a joke you didn't like the other day. I'm sorry. I hope it. Justinian, sorry, I don't. Okay, well, that's okay, man. Dustin Buck, would you shut up? No. I clicked this message. Is you wrote you are dumb. Oh, okay, terrific. I would love to know, Dustin, what makes you think that. How long have you been immersed in the topic of Middle East affairs, and what do you know about it? So all these people who've been out there chanting genocide in Gaza and all this without actually any evidence for it. If anything, the genocide was the attempted genocide on October 7th by the Hamas. That is very clear. They wanted to kill as many Jews as possible and as many Israelis as possible. and they ended up killing a whole lot of Israelis and a whole lot of Jews, and they also ended up killing a whole lot of Christians and Muslims and people who aren't even Israeli at all. Dustin Buck writes, in a war situation, especially removed on the other side of the world, what makes you think you have any idea what is actually going on? You think I'm on the other side of the world, Dustin Buck? I'm right here near the Syrian border. The people being attacked are people that are literally kin of people, some of them that I know well. By the way, you don't have to live next door or in a place of war to understand what the war is. You can learn things from afar. Are you in Ukraine? Do you know what's going on there? You don't buy what? That I'm in Israel? Okay. You don't have to buy that I'm in Israel. Go watch other videos of mine. I'm in Israel. BL, the IDF ended up killing all the hostages. What hostages? What are you talking about? What do you know about the Hannibal Directive carried on October? Okay, BL, the Hannibal Directive has not been in place for many years. It was removed from the IDF's protocols by the IDF Chief of Staff many years ago. Dustin Buck, we have internet in Israel. I didn't say I'm on the Syrian border. I said I'm very near it. Relatively in the world, I am very near the Syrian border. I am here in Israel. We have internet in Israel. And don't believe me? Go watch it. Go look at my channel. Go. Anybody else who's been here, feel free. So the Hannibal Directive BL is not a thing that happened on October 7th. Were there potentially some soldiers who were killed by other soldiers, or even maybe some hostages who got killed by hostages during the fighting? Of course, that's possible, but not intentionally. You can't stop laughing. Okay, enjoy your laughter. I am so full of really. I'm so full of shit. That's what you want to say. Okay. Again, you don't have any information to demonstrate that what I'm saying is not true. And you can go look at my channel and see that there are many videos where I'm literally walking around talking to you from Israel. But that's okay. Do you not believe that there are Americans living in Israel? Do you understand that in Israel, there's something like 700,000 American citizens? We have the highest number of American citizens living in Israel compared to any other country outside of the United States. Do you understand that? If you don't, that's perfectly okay. But yeah. Here, what can I show you that's you know, why should I even bother? You're an idiot, so I guess. The point is, people, I didn't come here to talk with this fool who doesn't understand basic facts. But yeah, the Druze in Syria have been suffering a real genocide right now, a real attempted genocide that is ongoing, and if it isn't stopped, it may end up being a real genocide where many thousands, if not tens of thousands or even hundreds of thousands of Druze in Sweden and surrounding villages may be eliminated, killed, murdered by the jihadi terrorists at the behest of al-Shara. And that is also an ethnic cleansing, because if they do kill so many people in al-Sweda, that is literally the biggest Druze city and the biggest one in Syria, which again has the biggest population of Druze people. By the way, anybody want to know a little bit about me? You can go look it up in the Greenwood Press publishing company. I helped write. I was one of the co-writers, co-authors of the Encyclopedia of the Arab-Israeli Conflict. Back in the 1990s, Professor Bernard Reich, if you look up his name, he wrote that book, and I was one of the co-authors. Okay, that's nice, Dustin Buck. Good for you. Yes, I have no idea what I'm talking about. I've been immersed in this topic probably long. I don't know how old you are, but from the way you type, I'm going to say probably longer than you've been alive. But yeah, I have no idea what I'm talking about. Sure. So the Druze, again, for Israel to just drop more ordnance on the jihadis in Syria is right now problematic because of political pressure from the United States. So on the one hand, Israel wants to and has promised to defend the Druze because they are the relatives of our brothers and sisters right here, or citizens of Israel who are Druze, who literally have relatives being murdered right now in Syria. On the other hand, unlimited amounts of ordnance, while the U.S. is actually pressuring Israel not to do that because the U.S. is more concerned with seeing that al-Shara's government will not fall, even though frankly it should, but they want al-Shara's government to make peace with Israel or to stop the war officially that Syria has had with Israel for the past 50 years. The thing is, he's just a jihadi in a suit. He's not a statesman. And it is very evident that despite his messages of, oh, I just want to unify Syria and I'm not going to harm the ethnic minorities, he's doing the exact opposite. He's continuing the civil war. It's just that now he has the power of the gun in the country. And he's absolutely turned those guns against all of the minorities, which was obviously going to happen. And it's why I said at the outset when Bashar Assad's government fell, I said, yeah, it's great that Assad is gone, but that doesn't mean that he's being replaced by anybody better. And you got to be real careful before celebrating. You know, wait and see, but with one eye open or both eyes open, because the probability is these jihadis are going to be as bad or worse as Assad. And that is currently playing out right now. Which again demonstrates why it was very good that Israel did what it did in the days after Assad fell, which was to knock out the vast majority of the Syrian military hardware that had been left behind by the army that deserted all of their posts, and that they took and secured various posts along the Golan Heights, including the highest most point on the Golan Height on Mount Hermon, and various villages on the Syrian side of the border, Druze villages for the most part, yeah, pretty much entirely, because we don't need an army of jihadis as well armed as the previous Syrian army was on our doorstep. The problem is now that Turkey, which is a NATO member, is perfectly happy to arm these jihadis. And in fact, they're doing it. And the jihadis have also bought drones from another jihadi-loving country, Qatar, the home of Al Jazeera propaganda news network. And a country that, alongside Iran, is responsible for funding Hamas. And before you go into, yeah, Bibi Netanyahu told them to fund Hamas. Yes, Bibi Netanyahu did tell them to continue sending money to Hamas while Hamas was running the government, because at the time, Israel did not know that they were building not only a massive underground tunnel network. We knew they were building tunnels, but not to that extent. And at the time, we did not know the extent of the size of the attack that they had planned for October 7th. We knew that Israel clearly knew there was something planned. Not necessarily for that date, but they knew there was something planned. It just so happens that in the days running up to that particular event, there were many signals that suggested to Israel, including to the prime minister, that that would be a very likely date for an attack, the days before or that day or in days coming or days after. But that particular date would be a very logical date for that to happen, including boots on the ground, women who are in the army, who are experts at surveillance of the border, who sent messages to their higher ups saying there is something happening, you need to do something before this happens. And they were ignored and laughed at essentially by their officers because, look, in Israel, you get a gazillion threats when you're in the army. There's constantly threats against Israel. They ignored this one, which was a massive mistake, and for which there should be accountability at the highest levels. But that is what led to the current massive phase of this war that started October 7th. Yes, the long war didn't start October 7th. Okay, fine. How far back do you want to go? We can go back centuries. We can go back 1400 years to when Muhammad started killing Jews for whatever reasons. But we're not going to do that right now. What matters right now is that if you're watching this video and you have any way to share or tell somebody what's happening in Syria with the Druze, that you bring attention to it. Hello, Dima from Russia. What's happening right now in Syria to the Druze is, again, an attempted genocide. Point blank, that's what it is. It's an attempted genocide, an attempted ethnic cleansing of the Druze and many Christians and Alawites who also live in Sueda and surrounding villages, but mostly in Sueda. Again, there are at least 700 to 1,000 that have been counted dead, and many more that have not yet been counted because their bodies have not yet been retrieved and counted in homes, care centers, churches, Druze houses of worship, in the streets. It's just horrifying. If you haven't seen the horrors that have been committed to the Druze people, all I can say is if you do see it, it is very reminiscent of what Hamas did on October 7th and, frankly, what the Nazis did during the Holocaust. When they would humiliate Jews in the street publicly, torture them even publicly, and kill them publicly in all manner of cruel ways, and rape them and take a number of them and turn them into sex slaves, etc. By the way, yes, the Nazis did that too, in case you didn't know that. Right now, the jihadis are doing it to the Druze and the Alawites and the Christians, but specifically, they're targeting the Druze, and they're under orders on a fatwa, which has invited Muslim extremists from around the world, and many of them have shown up by the hundreds, probably even the thousands at this point, to come to Syria, get weapons from the Syrian army, and to go and kill as many Jews as they can. That's happening right now. Again, there's not a lot of Druze in the world. They're a tiny minority. I think globally, maybe there's like 4 or 5 million, like around the world. But the vast majority, as a group in large numbers, they exist here in the Middle East, mostly in Syria and in Lebanon and in Israel and a bit in Jordan. I think it's around 20,000 in Jordan. There's around 140,000 Druze in Israel. There's a couple 100,000 in Lebanon, and there's about I think 1 million or so in a little bit more maybe in Syria, and a huge chunk of them live in Sweda and surrounding villages. It's the biggest Druze city. So yeah, the Druze, not Druze, Druze, Druze. It is absolutely horrifying what's happening to them. So if you know anybody who has any larger platform and has yet to bring attention to this, by all means, I urge you, if they talk about geopolitical topics, I urge you to let them know and share this, or just tell them to go read about what's happening with the Druze, because not a lot of people watch news, unfortunately, relatively in the world. Yes, many do, but not the majority of people. So this issue needs attention, and the reason it doesn't get attention more than it does is because Druze are a very tiny minority of population. And unfortunately, when Jews aren't involved, the news doesn't pay attention to it very much, right? You'll notice that the news only started paying attention to this once Israel said, okay, we're taking action to protect them. As soon as Israel bombed one jihadi troop or tank, immediately the headline was, Israel attacks Syria. No, the headline should have been, jihadis attack Druze, Israel's defending them. Israel's defending the Druze. That should have been the headline. Jihadis in Syria attacking Druze. No. Israel attacks Syria, because they know that's the clickbait that you get to sell papers or get clicks on your buttons or your videos or whatever. Seriously, on the real, bro? That's how you write. Like, what are you going to do to stop it? There is no way to negotiate a treaty between people who have been worrying longer than you've been alive. Okay, so Dustin, there are ways to negotiate treaties between people who have been fighting longer than I've been alive. If you don't know this, Israel has peace treaties with Egypt and with Jordan, two of its neighbors with whom it was at war for many years. The difference here is that the people who are now in charge of Syria are jihadi terrorists, and they are backed by a NATO member, which is massively problematic, because NATO members, and by the way, it's a NATO member whose military has close ties to Israel. The Turkish military and the Israeli military have a very long history of cooperation and training together in many different exercises for decades. It's only the political class in Turkey that is problematic. The problem is that the military is controlled, theoretically, by the president. You make no sense. And the problem is that NATO has a member that is effectively siding with jihadis that are counter to American interests and counter to NATO interests. Never mind, they're obviously counter to Israeli interests. I'm talking about the political side of Turkey. Yeah? The president, Erdogan, who was himself an Islamist, or an Islamist, whatever you want to call it. He believes in the Muslim Brotherhood, which is a group founded in Egypt, which, among other things, created Al-Qaeda and Hamas. And they want to spread Sharia law to the world, their particular brand of it. And if you're not following their particular brand of it, even if you're a Muslim, you're dead to them. So we have a very hairy pickle of a situation here that Israel is in the middle of and would like very much to help solve, mostly by, first of all, protecting our Druze brothers. Second of all, again, you got to remember the al-Shara interim government, so to speak, was in supposedly advanced talks 2 weekends ago, like 10 days ago, 9 days ago. They were in Uzbekistan or Azerbaijan. I forget one of the stans or Jans. But they were the Syrian government and the Israeli government met at a third party country, I think it was Azerbaijan, to discuss basically ending the conflict between Syria and Israel. And reportedly, al-Shara was there, even though he denies it. People who were inside say, in fact, no, he was there and he was in the meetings, and that the meetings went very well. You say I make no sense, but you actually don't demonstrate in anything you say what it is that I say that makes no sense. What I'm telling you are facts. The fact that you don't like facts, I can't help if you don't know history. I can't help if you don't understand Middle East affairs. I clearly know that you don't know things, because if you're saying that I don't make sense when all I'm doing is telling you facts, yeah, I don't know any of what. Sure, you're ridiculous. So Israel and Syria, again, have been trying to end their tensions and putting them behind them. But with this latest round of attacks against the Druze people, it makes it much harder for Israel to just ignore that and have a piece of paper that says, yeah, Israel and Syria are no longer fighting. That's not likely to happen in the current context. Dustin says, pure conjecture, dude. You don't know what you're talking about. Okay, Dustin, you believe whatever you want. I don't need to, I am so deeply involved in this, you have no idea. And that's fine. If you want to bring up things that you actually know, feel free. If you want to actually have talking points or discuss points, feel free. You saw before, you asked a question, and I was happy to answer it. Thank you, Justinian. So it is a very complicated situation here. And basically, what Israel is in the middle of right now, surrounded by a bunch of countries that are, also in a hot situation. Lebanon is in a bit of a hot mess, with the Hezbollah now basically having fallen from the supreme position they were in, thanks to Israel's actions against it, in order to stop them shooting rockets at us constantly for years. So Lebanese people are feeling their oats, so to speak, and doing what they can to tell the Hezbollah to get out of town, which is about time they did, because the Hezbollah has been doing nothing but keeping their country in a civil war since 1982. And it's about time they got out. And in Syria, we have the situation that I've just been speaking about. And then, of course, in Gaza and Judea and Samaria, we have the situations that we have. By the way, if you think Judea and Samaria are not volatile places right now, they very much are. Israeli soldiers there are regularly stopping terrorist attacks. The reason that there are checkpoints for Palestinians to come into Israel from Judea and Samaria is because literally every day or two we stop at least one or two terrorist attacks coming through the checkpoints. Before the first Intifada started in 1987, there were no checkpoints. We used to drive in and out. I used to go in and out of the West Bank all the time, no problem. It took many years and many attacks before Israel finally said, okay, we got to put up barriers of some kind. We can't just let these people coming in and out constantly attacking us without even putting up a barrier. So Israel put up barriers. You're trying to have talking points with you. The bigger picture is that you're not trying to explain what the inner workings of people more than yourself. I don't understand what you even mean by that. I'm not trying to explain the inner workings of people more than myself. What do you mean by that? You have no idea what motives are actually being deployed in a war situation. Dustin, I am not assuming motives. I'm working on facts here. What do you know about motives in a war? Okay. There are things you can know about intentions. That's not always the same as motives. For example, I can tell you it is the intention of jihadis to spread Sharia law around the world. It is the intention of Shia Islam, specifically the brand of it that is created by and manifested by the dictatorship in Iran. Not the same thing as the Iranian people, but the dictatorship that rules over the Iranian people. Yeah, that Islamist version of Sharia Islam wants to bring about Armageddon. There's a reason Israel and the United States don't want the dictatorship in Iran to have nuclear weapons, because they actually want to bring around Armageddon, to bring around the last Mahdi. If you don't know about that, go look it up. The whole world is a hot point, right? Yes, many things in the world are a hot point. Those are prima facie facts, my friend. Yes, the world is a hot point. Not the entire world. There are many countries that are not at war with anybody, right? But there are a huge number of wars right now. There are at least 70 ongoing countries or parties fighting 35 wars that are happening right now. That's a lot of war. That's more than 10% of the planet in a war right now, in different wars. Anyway, guys, ladies and gentle folk, I do actually have to get going. But I will be pleased to see you all again if you choose to come back. Every war is a quiet war until it becomes a loud one. You're over here trying to express the inner motives of people. I'm not expressing inner motives of people. Hang on, Dustin. Do you understand that jihadis want to spread Sharia law? That is like their motivation. That is like, you want to call that a motive? That is, they literally pray for it 5 times a day. If you don't understand that, you don't understand what's happening in the Middle East. Religion in the Middle East is not like you go to church on Sunday and you call yourself a Christian. It's literally people's identity. It's their ethnic group. It's their culture. It's their nationality. It's everything about them. It's their lifestyle. It's their daily routine. It is their life. Okay? Religion is not, yeah, I'm Arab and also I'm a Muslim. No, like, they are intertwined, right? A Sunni Muslim, specifically, we're talking about the ones who are conservative or more than conservative, right? Yes, of course, there are plenty of liberal Muslims who aren't in their thinking. They might be privately, depending on where they live. Like if they live in the Middle East, they might not necessarily have the freedom to be so liberal, unless they live in a place like Israel, where they can be as religious or non-religious as they want. But in most of the Middle East, if you're a Muslim, your brand of Islam, which is where you're born into, what you're born into, is very much your identity, whether you like it or not. And the ones who control the country you're in, depending on how extreme they are or how moderate they are, determine your fate in experiencing moderation or extremism. You got to remember, most of the Middle East, apart from Israel, is not governed by democracies. It's governed by autocrats or kings or other kinds of dictators, rulers. You can't see it because you're not over here trying to look at the bigger picture when you're at the perspective of a hay straw. Yeah, you don't know anything about me or where I am, or like I told you I'm in Israel. You don't know like where I've been or where I go or what I know or my experience is, you're making a lot of assumptions about a person you have no idea about. And that's fine. You can do whatever you want. If you want to know about me, go look at my channel. I'll tell you all about me. I usually talk about marketing and trading and crypto and things like that. Once in a while, I talk about geopolitical stuff. And this is one of those times. And why? Well, because there is a genocide happening in not far from where I am, to relatives of people that I know. And I wish it would stop right now, and I wish Israel would do something more about it, but politics is limiting the Israeli government from doing that, and the IDF from doing that, which to me is extremely frustrating, and I sympathize with the Druze who are frustrated by that. You know, the Israeli Druze, many of whom are serving in the army, and many of whom have served in the army, and they want to see Israel do more, and they have every right to expect it, because Israel has said we will do more. But they haven't been able to do that yet because of politics, and it is extremely frustrating. And I sincerely hope that something more will be done, and that Trump will stop trying to force Israel to come to an agreement with a bunch of terrorists who are going to break the agreement with them. The only reason al-Shara agreed to anything with Trump is because he knew that he could sweet talk him, and it worked, and he could get the sanctions lifted, and he could get all kinds of aid going into Syria. And he could get all kinds of benefits from being, he was invited to the Élysée Palace in France to meet with Macron. And he get all this international credibility just by switching his, terrorist schmata on his head for a suit and trimming his beard. It's ridiculous. He played Trump like a fiddle, frankly. I don't care if you like Trump or not. He played him like a fiddle. Now, you can say, well, Trump has good intentions and he's playing 4D chess. Maybe. But al-Shara doesn't. He's a murderer in a suit. A few months ago, like a year ago, not even a year ago, 6 months ago, even after he took over the country of Syria, he was still on the wanted list. $10 million bounty on his head. It was only after the U.S. decided to give him a chance that they took him off that list. Well, he seems to have failed that chance. Because for all the unifying he's done, and which he hasn't, and for all the reducing of tensions between ethnic minorities, which he's done, which, again, he hasn't. In fact, what he's shown is he's a murderous, bloodthirsty, genocidal maniac, just like was written on the package. And anybody who's surprised by that is naive. I've been telling you from the day that Assad fell, like I said at the beginning of this video, just because one dictator got out does not mean the one coming in is better. And he has shown it. He's no better. Yes, maybe he hasn't killed yet as many people as Assad did. Assad killed, what, 600,000 people in his 11-year war? I didn't hear any cries about genocide in that, did you? I didn't see any college campuses filled with students saying genocide in Syria. Did you? No. But this guy has already started killing thousands of people in the 6 months that he's been in power. And he's well on his way to becoming the next Assad or worse, if he's not stopped. So that's it, folks. That's it for now. You guys take care. And, like, follow, whatever it is. Subscribe, that's it. Subscribe if you like this. I try to make videos every day. I don't always, but I make as many as I can. Like this, live streams for the most part. I've stopped doing non-live stream videos a long time ago, for the most part. And maybe I'll start doing them at some point again in the future. But for now, live stream is kind of what I'm doing with this stuff, just to bring information to people who want to hear it. And yeah, I hope that you all have a peaceful day and stay safe and have a healthy, prosperous, happy, and free day. That's it for now, folks. Peace.